I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God. Good morning, everybody. Mark David Smith here. You are watching Contemplating the Constitution. And this show basically takes each and every article, section, clause, amendment, one by one, and we talk about those in depth as far as we can do research on it. I'm sure maybe we could do more research on it, but we get the general understanding and the general facts about each one of these sections in the Constitution. And basically, I run through my research, and if anybody comes on and join me, like Abigail O'Hare and Sherry Flanagan, who are two people that join me quite often. If they come on and give their opinions or their examples, things that they're familiar with when it comes to each and every one of these things. None of us are by any means experts on anything in the Constitution. All we know is from our everyday life examples and how we go through it, and the news, which is just astounding anymore. The news is just full. As a matter of fact, news agencies have got to be just packed anymore with all the different things that are going on in several areas. I'm also in the process of looking at the Constitution news, because every day there's something new that affects what we know as the Constitution, and is being violated or moved around, amended, all those type of things. There are news stories that are constantly being brought up within the context of the Constitution. And so starting next week, I'm going to put together a brief little news segment to kind of open the show up with that talks about Constitution in the news. And so I'm looking forward to that. It helps me keep updated on it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it too. We'll segment that out and put that with our news specific page on the Lamb Network website. Speaking of which, if you are watching from YouTube and haven't been to the Lamb Network website, shame on you. You should be doing everything from the website. You can watch all of our live shows while they're live. You can watch the archives of them, everything there. There is over 1,400 different videos. We're talking close to 3,000 hours of videos and news and segments and all that kind of thing on the website. And we're talking about MessianicLambNetwork.com. If you'll go there and check everything out, you'll find a massive amount of information, including everything that we're doing. Right there, everything that's up to date. Literally, most of the time, it's the only way you're going to find out what the Lamb Network is doing for any specific time or season. For instance, today is December, what is it today? December 23rd. A couple of days from now is the 2020 pagan holiday of Christmas, and the Lamb Network will be holding a special little broadcast at 2 p.m. Eastern, and and so, but you wouldn't know that unless you went to the website. So you might check that out and find out what we got going there. Anyway, looks to me like oh hear ye, oh hear ye, oh hear ye. Young lady has joined in. So, oh hear ye, Mrs. Abigail. How art thou this fine and wonderful day of the Lord?
Supernaturally wonderful.
But unsupernaturally, she's also wonderful too.
Exactly. So. Yes, it's all is good. All is tov. How are you, Mr. Mark David Smith?
I'm blessed of the Lord. Always blessed of the Lord. No matter what's up or down or in or out or what's going on, I'm always blessed of the Lord. And you know why that is, Abigail? Because I'm blessing Him.
That's right.
That's right. And that is the way it works.
That is the way it
works. The Lord, but blessings are a huge deal when you're blessing Him. So anyway, and so what's the news with you? I understand this is a special day for you and the governor.
It is. It's his birthday. Can you believe it? It's his birthday. And so I said, I'm going to let everybody know it's your birthday. And I'm telling you, the response has been amazing. This guy is very well loved by everybody. And that's so sweet. So, it's his birthday. And, during the time of the C Day, as a young boy, he was kind of overlooked.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we're trying to make up for it. We've been trying to make up for it for now almost 40 years, making sure that because his life matters. Do you know that? Do you know the governor's life matters? You know that.
That's right.
So anyhow, we're doing well. We're going to have we have a regular thing that we do on birthdays here in this house. We go to a restaurant. It's called the Hardcover. Okay. And so we go there and have a nice meal around the fireplace. And so we've done it for years. It's been almost like a tradition. So We're looking forward to that.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, tell him I said happy birthday. And
I'll appreciate that.
James is one of my most favorite people on the planet, and always has been. He's just the greatest. That's all there is to it. And so, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And so good. And so I guess what I was trying to thought process there is that you guys won't be doing your shows. And normally Abigail does her show, The Hidden Voice of Hadassah, on Wednesday evenings, and then followed by Israel My Delight with her and James. And of all the shows on the Lamb Network, those two shows, along with Kennard Levy Brown, you guys never miss a show. I mean, literally never miss a show. And of all the people on the Lamb Network that do shows, there's only a few of you that never miss shows. And so
I was trying to figure out how to do it from the hardcover. Believe me, I was trying to figure out.
I don't doubt.
But I said no. I get it. Believe me, you have no idea. I absolutely so enjoy. I'm so thankful to be able to do these broadcasts, and I know James is too. So
sure,
it's not easy forfeiting it, but
Yeah. I'm with you. Come on, taking a break every once in a while is fine. You don't need to be concerned. But very good. So everybody needs to know that those two shows won't be on this evening. And I do have a notice up. There's a banner up that says the shows are not this week. So, all right, Abigail, we have been talking about the Constitution. Every week we talk about the Constitution. The last couple of weeks, we've talked about Article 1, Section 9. We jumped into that a couple of weeks ago. And then, right away we talked about the writ of habeas corpus and what that was all about. And a lot of these things, a lot of these clauses in Section 9 literally talk about our personal rights when it comes to legal matters. And so last week we talked about the Bill of Attainer, which is forfeiting the civil rights, but also allows a person to get a hold of anybody, and you have rights, even though you may be sentenced to death or for a capital punishment, anything like that. You still have rights, and a lot of your rights are taken away for these type of things. But then we also talked about the ex post facto law, both of these being in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, meaning the ex post facto law, meaning that you can't do something and then they make a law against it and be charged for it, or the other way around. If you've already been charged for a law and they change that to a lesser sentence, they have to abide by that. Or even take the law away. So there's a lot of ways to look at these things, and that's why I like looking at them, because there are many different avenues from a lot of these laws. And I found real interesting that today, following through with Article 1, Section 9, jumping into Clause 4, is that Clause 4 is another one of these sections within the Constitution that basically is a time sensitive clause. What they word out in the clause only took place in the early years of after the Constitution was made. Most everything within Clause 4 has been amended in the Constitution, and the laws have been changed, and they have to do with taxes. The early way of taxing people in the United States was literally based on what they had to work with. Today, and I mean, even from, I know exponentially in the past few decades, the technology has advanced and exponentially just keeps doubling, tripling, quadrupling in the ability for everybody, including the government, to keep track of people and tax people and those type of things. And of course, as our society progresses, the laws have to progress to cover us and keep our rights intact. That's the way I like to look at it, is when the things in our country progress and the laws have to progress, they have to keep our rights in order. And we're seeing that is a huge challenge within the government today, especially through 2020, when everything changed and they had to reenact different things and make laws differently. And a lot of things are in the process of changing. As I read through constitutional news, I've been checking up on that. A lot of those news items literally have to do with exactly what I'm talking about here, in that they're having to keep updating what's happening with the people and throughout the planet, not just the United States. They're having to update and amend certain laws to keep up with that. So what we have here in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, it says no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. And I'm going, oh no, please, somebody, you gotta be joking here. Can somebody make up a constitution in today's English and not the Queen's English? I mean, it's like, come on. So when this happens, what I have to do is take each different phrase and then sometimes even write down to each different word and go and search the phrases, the words out. What are you trying to say? What's going on here? And so the first thing that jumps in my head, of course, is capitation or direct tax. You've got sectioning this out. You've got proportion to the census or enumeration, and also herein, which is legal talk. Also the section of before directed to be taken. So I started looking up each individual word, phrase, section, and then trying to put them together in an order that we could understand it, especially when it has to do with the fact that most of this has been somewhat done away with or redirected when it comes down to taxes. Basically, they did not have an income tax as we know it today. And as a matter of fact, federal income tax has really not even been around for very long. And we'll get to that pretty soon as we get through this. But so I want to start basically to understand where were they coming from when they said in proportion to the census of enumeration. What is, we understand proportion to, but what is I know what a census is. And I mean, I can figure out as an adult, a mature adult, I can look at the word enumeration and figure that out. But what does it have to do with the Constitution and taxes? So let's start off with what is a census? It is the procedure of systematically enumerating and acquiring and recording information about the members of a given population. Now, we know that. All of us have been through a census. And as a matter of fact, this year, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times we got our census in the mail. We immediately, put it all together, filled it out, sent it in, it's done, okay. And then over the next, oh my gosh, what was it, over like 3-month period, I think 4 different people showed up at our front door wanting to know whether or not we sent it in. And it's like, oh, come on, give me a break here. By the fourth person was some guy that pulled up in front of my house in a truck. And I saw him out there and says, hey, can I help you? He goes, yeah, just wanted to know if you sent the census in. What? How much money is the government paying these people to drive around to check on us whether or not we done our thinking census or not? It's like, yeah, I sent it in. Check your mail, okay? I'm sorry. That frustrates me. Anyway, we know what a census is. I guess that's my point. This term is used mostly in connection with national population and housing censuses. Sorry. Other common censuses include agricultural, traditional culture, business, supplies, and traffic censuses. The United Nations defines the essential features of population and housing censuses as individual enumeration, universally within a defined territory, simultaneity, and define, I never looked those words up, periodicity. Sorry, don't know what that is, but we could look those up, not going to do it. And recommends that population censuses be taken at least every 10 years. Now, that's been updated a little bit there, but within reading this, I looked it up, but it kind of got the idea here. Enumeration is basically the way that it's understood. That's what a census is. It's an enumeration. They are putting a number to something they want a number to. For instance, in Torah, when they went through the different tribes and they counted the book of Numbers, the book of Numbers could be parenthetically called enumeration. Because that's what they're doing. It's not just a number or numbers. It literally has to do with counting people and putting a number to people or different things. And that's why enumeration or census can actually have something to do with agricultural, traditional culture, business, supplies, traffic, so on and so forth. But then we understand, because in the actual clause, the wording says before directed to be taken, means that it's taxing based on a census only after a census has been taken. So back in the days of the early days of the Constitution, that's how they taxed everybody, is they took a census, and then it was and we're going to get into this, is basically what they called a poll tax. And it is, a direct tax based on the census, the counting of the people, and that's how they did it. And so let's go back to clause 4 wording. It says no capitation. And capitation, the definition of that is the payment of a fee or grant to any person or entity providing services to a number of people, such that the amount paid is determined by the number of recipients to the services. And so no capitation, in other words, no cap will be put on it, or no tax, says capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless they do a census. So they can't just walk up to you, your tax man couldn't just walk up to you and say, hey, you owe your taxes, pay me taxes. You can't do that. There's no way. Everybody owes. If you live in the United States, if you live in the country, if you live in an area, you owe taxes. You have to help the community. If you want to live in a community, you have to help that community to strive and thrive and survive. And to do that, we need to bring money into that culture. And so basically it's saying no capitation. In other words, no fee or grant, based direct fee or grant or direct tax shall be laid unless it's done through the census, which is an enumeration, and before directed to be taken. So once the before directed to be taken means that you can't just go out there and tax people. You have to wait for the census to be taken, and then we'll do the taxes. So I know that's a roundabout way to say it, but that's what my research shows me. A little more understanding based on back in the day when they actually did it this way. Clause 4 forbade the federal government from levying capitation, or other direct tax. Clause 4 ensured equality among the states. So, in other words, they prohibited states from imposing taxes on goods coming into their state from another state, and from favoring the ports of one state over the ports of another. And in the earliest form of Clause 4, everything could be in relation to a poll tax. So what's poll tax? Based on what we just learned, what we just talked about, taxes really came down to individual people. In other words, we take a census. This is how many people we have. This is how much we need. See, it's a multiplication and division form here. In other words, so how many people do we have? This is how much we need to run our government and the local communities. So let's divide the amount we need by how many people, and that's how much each individual owes. That's how it worked. Okay, and that's what a poll tax basically. Poll tax definition: a tax levied on every adult without reference to income or resources. It made no difference how much you made, how much you were bringing in, how much you had, how many property you had, or anything like that. It was literally, you are a person, we need this much money, and you're 1 billionth of whatever. And so it's a levy. So a tax levied on every adult. Well, I have an idea. I know what a levy is, but I went and looked it up anyway. So let me, in case you're not real savvy to this, let me just tell you, a tax levied on every adult. A levy is a legal seizure of your property to satisfy a tax debt. In difference to a lien is a legal claim against property to secure payment of the tax debt, while a levy actually takes the property to satisfy the tax debt. To me, I think as I looked at this and I pondered over all of this information and got to looking at it, I think it should have been worded a tax lien on every adult without reference to income or resources, because it's your property. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is, as soon as you say property, you think, oh, my land, my house, my furniture, everything, all the different individual items that I own is my property. But no, your money. The money you have, the money you bring in, the money you earn from a job, that is property. So if you look at it like that in tax understanding, a tax levied would be your property. So in other words, every time you make money or bring money in, that actually belongs to the government until they take their portion. So it's in other words, it's in lieu of us getting our money because of what you made. So that's the way I understand it. A poll tax is a tax as a fixed sum on every liable individual. Associated with states of the former Confederate States of America, poll taxes were also in place in some northern and western states. Poll taxes had been a major source of government funding among the colonies which formed the United States. Poll taxes made up from 1/3 to 1/2 of the tax revenue of colonial Massachusetts. Various privileges of citizenship, including voter registration or issuance of driving licenses and resident hunting and fishing licenses. Citizens in some states had to pay a fee called, that's what we're saying, just to vote in natural elections. So if you hadn't paid your poll tax, you couldn't vote. It's just straight out. They knew when you went to vote, they knew whether or not you'd paid your taxes or not. So on January 23rd, 1964, not that far away, the United States ratified the 24th Amendment to the Constitution, prohibiting any poll tax in elections for federal officials. Okay, so Clause 4 was changed by Amendment 16, which gives Congress the power to impose a federal income tax. Now, it looks to me like this young lady has showed up, so I'm going to bring Sherry in. I hesitated to bring her in. I wanted to get my spiel out there so people could understand. Good morning, Sherry.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
You're fine. I was enjoying listening to you.
Good. Well, I'm glad somebody
Linda
does.
dropped in. The government's after Fluffy. She's personal property. I don't know if people know that your pets are personal property.
They are. If they have a value to it, especially.
Yes. I can tell them she's worthless, but
Oh,
I'd say she turned her head in shame.
I got thinking last week about cats, and I thought, if cats could talk, there is one thing cats would never say. You know what that is? I'm sorry.
That's true. That's true. She caught a mouse, and she actually pushed it under Brett's door while he was asleep. She was feeding him breakfast, I guess.
There you go. All right. So thank you, Sherry, for joining us. We appreciate it. Anybody want to make any comments on that first section? That's basically the history of Clause 4. That's what it was about. That's how they taxed the people up until the 16th Amendment, which was ratified in 1913. Isn't that interesting? I didn't know that the federal income tax didn't come into existence as we know it today until 1913. So all of those years from the 1700s on was all basically a poll tax. Of course, I'm sure different places had their different taxes. They incorporated. But so anybody, go ahead, Abigail.
No, I think it's interesting about the poll tax. I mean, I don't like taxes. I understand they're not the favorite thing that we like to see come by us that we have to deal with, but we understand, especially in Massachusetts. That's one thing actually that James and I are constantly deciding where are we going to move, and so we look at the taxes in the various states because it really is. It's can I say burdensome? I said it. Yes. But I wonder, regarding the poll taxes, I think, can you imagine if that was instituted today and that the only way you could vote is if you were paying taxes, because that kind of solidifies citizenship. It also kind of solidifies responsibility. And it also solidifies how much of an interest, no pun intended, the individual has concerning their right to vote. And so I just wonder if that's leverage.
Interesting.
A good leverage as far as keeping things in order. Although I'm sure that the minds that want to manipulate would find a way around it. They would probably find a way to say, oh, yeah, this individual paid their taxes and they didn't. But anyhow, that's another story for another broadcast. But I wondered if there was, that leverage in that kind of tax right now in light of what we're going on as far as the election, if that would have been some leverage. Just saying.
It begs for thought in that there's a lot. You'd have to really think through all the different aspects of it is what I'm kind of looking at here, in that it starts bringing up individuality, and it also means a poll tax literally means one tax for each individual, meaning there are no In other words, if you made $14 billion last year and I made $14 last year, I still have to pay the same tax. And that, that's different. that I'm not for whatsoever at all. And so, I'm not so sure that, it could be under the same heading, but I do agree that maybe there's a different way to work it so that, again, voting comes down to each individual. In other words, you can't, no matter how much tax you pay, you can't vote unless you paid your taxes. So your name would be on a tax list of whether or not taxes were paid on those. And if you still owed taxes, then you don't have the right to vote. That's interesting as we discuss it. That's an interesting way to look at it. I think there's,
and I think it would put more value on the voting
Sure.
process. And I say that again, money, with the way that our minds work, money does put value on
Right.
who we are, if we will. I mean, that's not the ultimate value, but it does show responsibility. Again, paying
Very
your
good.
taxes, and so I because of the dishonesty, and I'm going to say the worst virus that is in the land today is the virus of Torahlessness. That to me is the virus that is destroying mankind altogether.
Very true.
The ones that aren't Torah observant and taking it seriously. So I just, we when you're thinking about, yourself as a child, and you think about raising your children, you think about raising them with responsibility. And I think there's leverage in that measure of responsibility, and sometimes it's hard. It's very difficult to pay the taxes. I know that there's a lot of different layers of the taxes. Wealthier people can find ways around it. There's ways that wealthier people may not pay as much. They do still pay taxes, but anyhow, I just think that there's a thought process with it that concerning polls and concerning because we do take a census, and but again, the census can be mucked up. It can be very much messed up because of lying, and people have done that. And so we've had people that used to live in this house years ago, and they still send their names here to this house, and one of them has passed away. So I just think that money could maybe have some type of a seal, if you will, on the responsibility and the authorization of that individual's vote.
Interesting way to look at it. Sherry, anything to add to that?
Well, the poll tax was actually starting in the 1890s. This is why it was repealed in 1964. We know all in 1960 they had the civil rights movement and everything. Well, they had used the poll tax to keep the African American people from voting. It was like a voting fee. And if they had not paid that tax, which most of them could not afford to pay the tax, then they couldn't vote. And they actually had included a grandfather clause in some states that excused poor Caucasian people from payment if they had an ancestor who voted before the Civil War. But there were no exemptions for African Americans. So that was, it actually started in the 1940s to repeal the toll tax, but it was repealed by that 24th Amendment in 1964 to keep the African Americans from voting, and they kept them out of state elections and everything. So they put out things saying pay your poll tax before such and such a date, or they wouldn't be eligible to vote. Anybody, but it was specifically aimed at keeping the African Americans from voting. So that's why they had actually the 24th Amendment.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Oh, that definitely puts a different spin on it, you know. And so
Yeah.
when you and I appreciate that information, because I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. So I just think that again, it's dealing with the heart of man, and but there's been a major spin right now where a lot of people, regardless of even if they're a citizen of the United States of America, were allowed, they pushed them into voting, and they weren't even citizens, you know, and they didn't even know who the people were. You know, they would say, well, who am I supposed to vote for? And they say, no, who you don't want, who we do not want you to vote for. This is who you're supposed to vote for. And they would point them out to the individual that they wanted them to vote for. So, again, you can see this whole thing is dealing with, you just brought up, Sherry, is dealing with the heart of man, and how people institute certain clauses and regulations. And, you know, I mean, the tax issue, I know that Mark has here, I love taxes. And I think in terms of, you know, how many years we've been paying into like the Social Security tax and other taxes. And then when you reach that age where you're eligible for Medicare, but then you find out that even with all that money, because you look at your paycheck and you see that so much money went into the federal tax, which is supposed to be paying for the Medicare end of it, and then you end up having to pay for Medicare. I don't get it. You know, not all of it, but you still have to do a portion of it. And if you tallied up how much money you already put into it, it's just, to me, I see a lot of personally manipulation, especially for people who have been living in this country, working in this country, and paying their taxes, you know, and why should there be consequences for that action, you know?
Sure,
So
I get you.
It's an interesting government. I like that government. I'd rather have this government than Venezuela.
I'll agree. I'll agree with that every day, every time.
I love this country.
I do too. But you know, those Medicare money that you paid in, you don't, it has to be skewed out over a period of time. So, you know, paying a little bit X on it. They expect that we're going to live to be 140. See, apparently, by how long a period. No, I'm just joking.
I know what you're saying.
They don't even look at that stuff. But anyway.
They're trying to wipe us out because Medicare doesn't pay for everything.
No, it doesn't.
And there's a lot of things exempt. And actually, I'll tell this, when Hillary and Bill Clinton were in office, you know, they tried to get that national health care passed. And one of our doctors who really kept up with it explained it to us. He said, this is what they were doing. And this is really scary. And we need to sit up and take notice because, you know, what they would do is if you say you had some kind of disease, and say someone had a cancer that was easily cured by an operation. Okay. Simple operation. That's it. Done with. They would look and see, it would go before a review board. This is what the Clintons were wanting. It would go before a review board. And that review board would decide based on your age and whether you were helpful to society, whether they would grant you the permission to have the operation. And he said, okay, so they refuse it. Say you're 80 years old and, you know, they'll say, no, you're too old, you're a drain on our society. So now we're not going to grant this to you. So whatever healthcare says, no, they won't pay for the operation, but it's not that they just won't pay for the operation. The doctor told us, he said, it's not that. He said, if somebody came in and they were refused and they said, well, we'll just pay you cash. He said, I would be forbidden by law even to do the operation. You can't have it, period, by any doctor, whether you pay cash or whether they pay. They decide whether you live or die. And I think it was named, whatever this board was named after, the dog, the three-headed dog in Greek mythology that guarded the gate to the underworld. That was Cerberus or something like that. That was the name of the board. They were deciding whether you lived or died. That was really what was behind it. And a lot of people don't know that. So Medicare doesn't pay for everything. Yeah. But at least if you have the cash, you can still say, I'm still going to get it. Yeah. But the way they wanted it, they wouldn't even do that. So you got to watch what these sneaky-fied things they're trying to put in these laws that they're doing, because, you know, I tell you, it's really interesting, and it causes us, it throws us more back on God is what it does. It throws us more as we have the props pulled out from underneath us. It throws us more back on God. And that's really where we need to be. I mean, I'm not saying have bad stuff happen, but that's where where we really need to be. Sorry, it took so long, but
no, it's okay. Everything you said, very good, very applicable to what we're talking about. Very good. Let me jump us up to today's understanding of how taxes work. It's per my understanding of the research, and once again, we're that should be
don't work. We work. Taxes don't work.
No, they do though. They do. Come on, come on. We're still in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, and we're going to bring you up to date now as far as the amendments ratified in 1913, which played a role in building up the powerful American federal government of the 20th century by making it possible to enact a modern nationwide income tax. Before long, the income tax would become by far the federal government's largest source of revenue. The contrast to taxation based on taxes collected because of census, poll tax, that type of thing, became direct and indirect taxes, income taxes, and duties. And that's really what it boils down to where we're at today. Direct tax definition: a tax such as income tax, which is levied on the income or profits of the person who pays it, rather than on goods or services. Indirect tax is collected by one entity in the supply chain, usually a producer or a retailer, and paid to the government, but is passed on to the consumer as part of the purchase price of a good or service. The consumer is ultimately paying the tax by paying more for the product. Indirect taxes can be defined as taxation on an individual or entity which is ultimately paid for by another person. The body that collects the tax will then remit it to the government. But in the case of direct taxes, the person immediately paying the tax is the person that the government is seeking to tax. Examples of indirect taxation are, of course, excise duties on fuel, liquor, and cigarettes. By contrast, income tax is the clearest example of a direct tax, since the person earning the income is the only one immediately paying the tax. For instance, admission fees, anything bought through retail are other clear examples of indirect taxation. So a direct tax basically means that they come directly to you, the individual, to get the tax based on your income. And an indirect tax, for instance, anytime you go to a retail store and you buy anything, you know that taxes are calculated by the cash register, and they are automatically entered in, meaning that the person that owns the goods you're buying has already paid taxes on each individual item, and then used a calculation to take the whole of a lot of goods or items and break it down per. It's almost like the original taxation that they did on the census, except that it went now to goods, and they paid their taxes already on these goods, the duties or the tariffs, whatever like that. We'll get into that here in a second. But then it's broken down to each individual item, and then when you go to the store to pay for that item, it's all a part of it. It's interesting because sometimes if you decipher it, it comes down to the taxes are paid for the goods by the manufacturer, the taxes are paid by the distributor, and then the taxes are paid by the retail store that are selling the item by you. So how many times did a tax get paid on each individual item? You know, I mean, they start deciphering this, and it's like, by the time you buy it from the retail store, nobody knows how many different taxes have been paid over and over and over for the same item. There's no way to calculate that. So anyway, one of the things mentioned is duties. A duty is another form of taxation, and how the government brings in their money. Definition would be is a duty is a kind of tax levied by a state. Remember, we go back to being levied is your personal property and has to do with taxes, and it really comes down to the government actually owns everything. All you're doing is paying them based on what you own or supposed to own. Duties is often associated with customs, also known as tariffs or dues. A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on imports or exports of goods, based being a source of revenue for the government. Import duties can also be a form of regulation of foreign trade and policy that taxes foreign products to encourage or safeguard domestic industry. Tariffs are among the most widely used instruments of protectionism, along with import and export quotas. Duty is often used to describe a tax on certain items purchased abroad. A duty differs from a tax in being levied on specific commodities, financial transactions, estates, rather than on individuals. Duties may be import duties, excise duties, state duties, death or succession duties, but not such direct impositions as personal income taxes. A good example of a duty within the United States, and not necessarily something that has to do with importing or, I mean, if we've all of us have traveled outside the country, we know that if we bring something back, you have to pay a duty on that. That's a tax for specific items, not everything, but some of the things that you purchased are bringing back, and it's the government already getting their money because once it's here in the United States, it's yours. So another example here in the United States is an estate duty, or it is called an inheritance tax. And it's a tax levied on the estate of a deceased person in many jurisdictions, or in the inheritance of a person. The tax is sometimes referred to formally or informally as death duty. And not real sure how that works, but really not interested in it. So that's pretty much what I have. To me, it's very simple. It's just different ways to look at what they did before a certain time. And of course, once again, as I started off this whole section on Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, is that they are changing the laws and amending the Constitution almost daily based on the progression of things that are happening, not only in the United States, but around the world, and how the United States deals with different things around the world. The number one issue is that our rights are maintained. And that's really what we're looking at here, is our rights, to our right to pay taxes, our right to, do what we need to do to keep this country going, or our state, local officials, that all that thing. And that being said, Abigail, North Carolina has some of the lowest taxes of any place we've ever seen. But our taxes are just literally extremely low. So let that be a little influence when you and James are thinking about moving and looking up taxes. The first place you might want to look is the state taxes of North Carolina are really, really low. So there you go. That's basically all I have on Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4. Anything you guys want to add to that would be great.
Well, I'll just step in real fast, because I just think that, again, this is a timely. I don't think it's not a coincidence that we're talking about this, because in light of what's going on in our country. And to me, it's a kudos to President Trump, who has dealt with the tariffs, has dealt with trying to bring more productivity here in the United States of America, and to help, to get America on its feet, because you don't realize, as a consumer, you do realize one thing. I'll never forget going into all these stores and purchasing things. And I'd turn it upside down to see where the product came from. And I have to tell you, 99.9% of the product came from China. Mm-hmm. And I would say, what's up with that? And I would say it out loud to different people. I'd say, what is this? This is really bizarre. I've never seen such a influx of products from China as I have during the past couple of years. And everybody would just look at me, and I'd say it must be having some kind of an effect on the United States of America, not being privy to all this,
right?
All the larger scope of it. But nonetheless, I saw it, and so when you had it broken down by our president, who is a CEO, if you will, he knows about the taxes and he knows about building, building, and so. I think that's what stirred the pot too, regarding what's going on, all of with the whole government, if you will, is when he started saying, "Wait a minute, what about United States of America? Why are we putting so much money in to other countries? Why isn't the money, that when we're purchasing, why aren't we purchasing from Made in the USA?" So having said all that, I saw that wisdom manifesting, and I believe that he had the, if you will, the genius of really nailing it, and but other people had other agendas, and so they developed relationships with all these other countries, and anyhow, they took away from USA and invested in other countries. But it took a spin with President Trump. He did a major cleanup of that. Except for one country, I was extremely active against people not buying products from them, and that was our Israel.
Israel, right?
And I have years ago. I think I showed it to you, Mark. I think we posted it on Messianic Lamb Network. James and I, because they have a group that boycotts Israel products. It's called Code Pink.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so we went into the various large stores in Boston, Massachusetts, and Abigail turned one of the stores upside down. I said, I want to purchase products from Israel.
Huh.
And they had put up a boycott. We had to remove all the products from the shelves because you see the people out there. I said, I know I see the people out there. I said, I want to purchase. There's products that I buy from Israel. But to make a long story short, I stood my ground in there. And I said, I know the products are in this store. Please bring them out. We had about 20, 30 people with us. We want to purchase products. So the bottom line is, I believe that, we have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, but we also have to use that wisdom, as who we're supporting and why we are supporting what country. And so, again, an hour-long program doesn't do justice for this particular topic, but I'm so thankful you brought it up because I think it's something that we as Americans need to be cognizant of constitutionally as well as morally.
Very true. Very good. Very, very good. I like it. All applies.
I did get to purchase the product just to put the manager did
I
put
remember this.
He put it on the shelves. And he said, this woman, if we don't deal with this woman, there's going to be.
I remember that. Yeah.
You remember that? Yeah. And they made a cartoon. They made a cartoon of some type of I forget the name of the book, but they made a cartoon and they showed one of the characters in the cartoon was me as like a superhero.
Wow.
Anyhow, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I know you find that hard to believe.
No, not at all. Especially coming from you. No. Sherry, anything?
You talked briefly about the indirect tax, and there's been some very interesting taxes. They'd say it takes reading your telephone bill and finding out the different charges on that.
Good example.
It would take a scientist, brain surgeon, and something else. And they got 3 of those people and they couldn't tell you what the bill was. And then they got the people at the telephone company. They couldn't tell you what the taxes were. Well, it turned out, now get this, there's a thing called forgotten taxes. And one of those taxes was a tax that we were paying on the telephone bill that started in the 1890s for the Spanish-American War. It was a phone tax that was charged to our phones, and then that was eliminated, and then World War I came along, so they put a tax back on the phone for World War I. And then that ran out. Then they had World War II. They put a tax on the phone for World War II. And then it came on down. Do you know when that rascal was repealed? 2006. We were paying a 3%. By that time, it had gotten to be 3%, a 3% federal tax on our phone bills. Everybody that had any kind of phone, if you had 2 phones, you were paying it on every phone until 2006. Now that's ridiculous, but it came to light, when someone started saying, how do you read your phone? What are all these surcharges? Where is this going? Somebody asked that question. If we don't watch these rascals, that's it. Yeah. And in the state of Mississippi, they did this. You know how they're always for get a hybrid car, electric cars, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is the deal. 2 things. When you pay for your gas, you have a road tax that is included in the price of the gas.
That's an indirect tax.
It's an indirect tax, and it goes for the upkeep of the roads. Well, if you are driving a hybrid car, you are buying less gas. So Mississippi, some knucklehead in the legislature thought it would be great that everybody that owned a hybrid vehicle pay an extra $75 on their license, or $150 on their license, depending on what the vehicle was, because they weren't paying their taxes because they were using less gas. Boy, you talk about an uproar. I mean, it wasn't too very long that they were up there. Oh, we're going to repeal it. I mean, people were up in arms. You rascals up there tell us all this stuff, and then you're going to tax us. And I'll tell you another thing, too, that happened. You know, all these people in your older diesel engine vehicles, you can run them on cooking oil. A lot of people don't know that. Your older ones, now not the newer ones, but your older diesel vehicles, and they're not subject to an EMP either. That's another thing. Some of the things in it are. I mean, you can push them babies off and they'll start up and run. But people were putting cooking oil, a certain percentage, like up to 80% of cooking oil. Well, you know what? If you got caught with cooking oil in your tank, you got a big, heavy fine for doing it. Some of the states had it because they said you're not paying your road tax. So there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't realize, these indirect taxes, if you know, they were finding a way around them. So, if that makes sense. So and then you mentioned the inheritance tax. People that have any kind of land or property that they want to hand down to their kids or whatever. Each state has their different inheritance tax, and I think they eliminated the inheritance tax on the federal level. I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on it. You'd have to find out yourself. But then they would, like, if it's over such and such amount, you had to pay it. Well, a lot of your people that are in the know and tax lawyers, a lot of times they'll structure things to where they won't be subject to the inheritance tax. Like, they may put all their assets in a corporation, in a family corporation, and a corporation never dies. And you inherit stock. Well, you inherit stock at the basis of what that stock value is. So you're not being taxed on that. So that's one entity. And I'm not a tax attorney. Don't anybody out there quote me. I'm just saying some of the things I've heard that people do your own research, get your own attorney. But that's what some people do to protect their assets. Or they'll find a way to funnel the assets to their children before they pass on. There's a certain amount you can give to your kids without any taxable things to you or to them. I think it's capped out at a certain amount. It's not that much, but you know, over the years, if you could structure yourself, if you know what the tax code is at that time, you can structure yourself to avoid excess taxes. Now, evading taxes is different. That means you know you owe it and you try to hide it and you try to be sneaky-fied. That's evading taxes. That's a felony. Go to jail, do not pass go, you know, that kind of thing. But you can avoid taxes by structuring yourself according to what the law says. And you need an attorney for that, a tax attorney. But I'm just throwing that out there. There's a lot of stuff out there that people can pay unnecessary taxes, that if they structure themselves. A lot of very wealthy people are very, very poor on the books. That's how they get by with it. They have things and other entities that they have access to.
Well, what you're saying is so right. It all really boils down to paying attention to what's really going on, especially in your own community as far as taxes are concerned. Your community, your county, your state, everything that's happening within the government meetings and the bills being taxed, all the different things that are happening. You got to keep on top of that to be able to do it. One thing I thought about when you were saying that is it's almost like coupons. When you go to a grocery store, you know, you don't pay the full price because you've got coupons, but you have to keep up on that. You have to go search out those coupons and get those coupons and pay attention. And when it comes in your mail, don't just throw it in the trash. you have to go and look, well, I use this and I use this. The only thing about that type of thing is it ends up being a lot of people buying stuff they don't ever use simply because they can get a deal on it, you know? Anyway, so taxes are kind of the same thing. You have to keep up on what your local government's doing and what they're taxing. And the examples of the, at the gas pump and all of those other things, really good, Sherry. Those are very good examples. And there's just thousands of indirect taxes that we see. If they were direct taxes, we'd know about them because they're directly in front of our face. It's those indirect taxes that we just don't keep track of. Another thing I was thinking about, you're talking about your phone bill. I pay my phone bill online. I never even see the bill. I never even see the itemized deductions or the itemized things that you're paying for each individual one. But I remember back in the day when we used to get that bill and looking at it and going, no, there ain't no way in the world I'm paying that. That ain't right. And then, of course, you can't argue with them. So anyway, very good point. And so unless you guys got something else to add, Abigail, you look as though you got a little something extra there.
Well, I find it very interesting, and I do think we have to be we need to be privy to all this, you know. I'm thankful you brought it up because there's a lot of hidden
that's right,
taxes, if you will, that we probably could be saving a lot of money individually, and we could also be helping other people come to the light regarding that. So I that's one thing I have to say about President Trump, that I think he's opened up people's eyes to that. I think he's shown that in so many ways, and even especially the government. I think there's people that are waking up in the government that want to do right by the people, if you will. So
very true.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you brought it up, Sherry. You are a lightning rod with this. Wow.
Good
I
point.
love it.
I like it.
You know, that's why they hate Trump so much, is because he has awakened the people to these things.
Yeah.
He has done this. And the reason why I knew about all the stuff, Bob is the only man I know that sits down and reads his IRS book before he does our taxes. I mean, he really keeps on top of it. He does, you know, he did his brothers and all that, and he really keeps on top of it. So
very good. I like it. All right, I'm going to call this one done, everybody. I appreciate it. I appreciate your coming in, helping me out, and listening. Interesting how people do that. So the end of what we just talked about in Clause 4 had to do with duties. Clause 5 and Clause 6 step into more detail about duties. And Clause 5 says no tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Clause 6 says no preference shall be given by the regulation or commerce of revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. That literally, those two are add-ons to a part of Clause 4, and we'll deal with that next week as we carry on the understanding of duties and taxes. So Abigail, Sherry, thanks a million for coming in and sharing what you have to offer for contemplating the Constitution. Appreciate it. Hope you guys come back next week and we'll do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless. Have a great week.
You do likewise. Shalom.
Shalom, everyone. Be blessed and not.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.